Hello and welcome to Catch More Media. In tonight's show, we have a real treat in store for you, as we join 5-time world champion Alan Scotthorne for a roach fishing masterclass on his local Mexborough Canal.
Today I'm down on the Mexborough Canal near Rotherham, close to where I live. I've fished this canal many times. It's full of big roach, but I've set myself a real task today. Today it's absolute bright sunshine, close to 30 degrees, not the sort of temperatures that we normally get in England. Now, hopefully today I'll catch some fish. These roach are quality fish. I'm going to put a ground bait mix on the bottom, quite an active mix, and loose feed hemp and maggots over the top, and hopefully catch some big roach. So let's see how we go. Today I'm going to be introducing ground bait at the start, and the ground bait that I've selected is 3000 Super Canal Black. This is a black ground bait that's very fine, but it's a great mix for roach. So I'm just going to add a bag of that to the actual bucket. So that's the first ground bait. The second one, which is also a roach type ground bait, is Census Roach. This is probably one of the biggest selling ground baits across Europe. It's a very fine dark brown mix that just is brilliant for catching roach again. So I'm just going to add that as well to the mix. So that's just two bags of ground bait. I'm going to cup everything that I actually feed today, because this canal's quite difficult. The roach are big. You don't want a big area of ground bait, so I'm not going to be boiling it in. Everything's going to be introduced through a cup. And also the ground bait's going to be mixed quite dry, because I want that ground bait to be active. So that's the two ground baits that I'm going to use. I'm also going to add to this Census crushed hemp. Now Census crushed hemp, it has oils that again help the activity of the ground bait. And I'm not going to put all the bag of this in. If you were to put all the bag in, it'd just be miles too much. You wouldn't suddenly feed 3 pints of hemp at the start. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get a tub and just measure out about a pint of crushed hemp. Now you can see that's all crushed up lovely, and the white particles in the ground bait, that's fantastic for roach. They love eating them tiny little bits of hemp. So that's a great additive to put into the ground bait. Now once that's mixed, I'm also going to add hemp. Now the Census Super hemp it's very oily, so that again that's more activity and more drawing power to the ground bait. And as we know, hemp catches more roach than anything that we use. Once roach gets switched on to hemp, I'm going to loose feed hemp over the top of the area that I'm going to feed today. But also I'm going to put some hemp into the ground bait. Now this canned hemp comes, it's got actual water in it. So what you've got to do is actually strain the water off. So I just strain the liquid off, and then you're left with the hemp ready to add to the ground bait. But I'll mix the ground bait first and then add the hemp to it. So then it's just a case of using a whisk and water and just whisking the particles together. This ground bait, 2 bags of ground bait, normally takes about 3 pints of water. But I'm going to add it very carefully because I want this mix to be quite dry. So I'm just going to add it slowly to the mix until I get the particles to start sticking together. If you want less active ground bait, the more water you add to ground bait, the actual particles in the ground bait soak up the water. But because I'm using a ground bait that I want to be active today, I'm going to mix it quite dry. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to get it so it's just starting to all together, and then I'm going to leave it for about 15 to 20 minutes while I'm finishing rigging up, and then complete the ground bait. Once I've done that, I can then add the hemp. I've got the ground bait now to the texture I want. Quite a dry mix, not over wetted, so that I'll get some activity from it. To that, the only two baits I'm going to add, because I'm going to loose feed hemp over the top, and I'm going to loose feed big maggots, just bronze and red maggots over the top of this mix. I want something that I can put on the floor. So a good additive to put in for roach is pinkies. Right, hemp as I've also said I'm going to add. So I've just got a tin of hemp that I've strained off. So I'll put that into the mix. Because hemp is quite hard, it's easy just to whisk it in. And that separates it through the mix. Now the other thing I want to add is pinkies. Now pinkies, what you can do is actually kill them, but because I'm roach fishing, I prefer to add live baits because I'm fishing for roach. If I were fishing for skimmers, I'd have no complaints at all about killing the pinkies and also maybe adding some dead maggots as well to the mix. But today I'm fishing for quality fish, so I want them pinkies to be moving on the bottom. But of course, when you add them to ground bait and you're potting them in, when they're moving about in the balls, what tends to happen is they break the balls up, so you get the ball not going to the bottom. And of course, this canal's 11 foot deep. So a good thing to do is just get some pinkies, add them to a bowl like this. And what you can do is actually pick the pinkies up and rub them, right? And if you rub them in your hands, right, you don't actually kill them, but what you do is actually slow them right down, right? So I can add them to the ball and they're not as live as what they are when they've not been rubbed. Once you rub them like this, it just slows them down long enough so you can cup the actual pinkies in. So, but they will actually come round. All you're doing is sort of stunning them. So this is just a little tip about adding pinkies to your mix. So all I've done is just rubbed them through my hands, which has stunned them that little bit to add to the ground bait. So then what I'm going to do, once they've been done, add them to the ground bait, and again I can whisk them in. Now once that goes in, you can see the pinkies now are stunned, they're not as lively as what they would be normally. So when you're cupping your mix in, they'll not break the balls down. So that's just a little tip about adding pinkies to your mix. What a quality fish, another big roach. It's been absolutely fantastic fishing this. Really has been good. To say the conditions, to say it's really hot and still, I mean the sun's been out now for like 2 or 3 hours, just really high in the sky, and you'd expect to struggle, but it's really been good fishing, and fish have been of a good quality. Now what I've done, I've introduced ground bait at the start, and I've just loose fed maggots and hemp over the top of the line. So let's just have a little look at the rigs what I've got set up. Now the rig I've got set up for fishing for roach, you've got to bear in mind this canal's really clear. I've got a very small size 20 hook. It's a Kamasan B511. It's a silver hook that matches maggots perfectly. Line above it, even though the quality fish that I'm fishing for, I've only got a 0.75 hook length on. Now it's the suplex, just the normal suplex hook length in 0.75, and it's a 21 centimetre hook length. So it's a little bit longer than what you'd fish normally. Most people fish with about 5-6 inch of hook length. This is a little bit longer, 21 centimetres. And that's because I want the bait to be presented nice on the drop, and I'm fishing with maggots as well, just a single maggot hook bait. So a little bit longer hook length. Above that I've just got 3 number 11 strung out, right, and that's over about, I would say, probably 50 to 60 centimetres. I've got a block of shot, 3 number 11 droppers below, and then just a block of number 10s. Above that then, mid-rig, which is quite strange, I've got 3 number 13s, which are my trimmers that actually set the float. I always put the trimmers up out of the way so that they don't interfere with rig at all, so you don't get any tangles or anything, because I've just got a straight block of 6 number 10s, then the 3 number 11 droppers to the hook length. The main line again is important. It's a clear canal, just fishing with 010 main line. Now 010 suplex is strong enough to catch bream up to £3 if you're lucky enough to hook one, even bigger. I mean 010 is very, very strong, especially when you've got a light hook length of 0.75. You can fish very, very light main lines, and what that does, it helps your float to present much nicer. The lighter your main line, the better it is for your float presentation. The float I'm using is an AS7. It's got a wire base to it, a 0.6 wire base to it, and a fibre bristle. Now fibre actually sinks. When you chuck fibre in water, it actually sinks. But because you've got a body, you can shot that body underneath surface. The bristle is literally non-buoyant at all. Even though it actually sinks fibre, you can actually shot it. It's strange. You'd think that, you know, a material that sinks on top of a float would just sink. But of course, because there's a body there, you can set it so you've literally got 1/4 inch of bristle showing. This is why it's important to have the droppers, so you can trim. The actual trimming shots where I've got in the middle of the rig, the number 13s, you can take one off, add one on, just to set that bristle absolutely perfect, with just about probably 1/4 inch above the surface. Now I'm fishing with quite a long line. A lot of anglers would fish quite a short line on a canal like this, but because it's quite clear, I've fished with a long line. Now this allows the float to relax nicely, but you can move the pole away from where you're actually fishing, so it's quite a long line above the float. The elastic's quite interesting. I've just got it through just one section of my acolyte pole, right? So it's just, there's about probably close to 1 metre of elastic, that's all. But of course it's a soft elastic, it's just a number 4 elastic. So there's plenty of elastic. I mean, if you hook a big fish, this will probably stretch, you know, maybe 20 feet easily. But of course, because it's quite powerful over its length, it's quite short, you can control fish very easily. So that's the rig that I'm using, just a 0.6 float, and it's an AS7 in the Drennan range. These floats are very good on this canal, because this canal occasionally you get boats through the locks and it pulls either way. So I tend to use a wire bottom float. So that's the first rig I've got set up. The second rig, if I do get a lot of boat traffic, and now we've just started to get a little bit of wind on the canal, I can change up to a slightly bigger float. So it's the same float, but just in a 0.6, so just a slightly bigger float. Same length of line above, same elastic, very, very similar shotting, but all I've done, instead of having number 11 droppers, because it's sometimes tows around, I've just got slightly bigger droppers on this rig and the same hook length and hook. The block of shot, because it's a 0.6, are just number 8s, which allows you just to sit and hold the float more static. I've also set the same float up in a 0.8 as well. And today at one stage we had a couple of boats come through and the canal were rocking backwards and forwards, and it was absolutely the best float with the 0.8 then. So that's the 3 rigs that I've set up and why. I've gone a little while without any roach, and that's not quite the stamp I was catching, but I've just had one about 6 or 7 ounce that because I'd not been catching for a while, I'd had 2 or 3 perch as well. I thought it'd be good to try and top up with ground bait. Even though the canal's very clear, I thought just a little bit more activity in my peg might bring some roach back, and that's what I've done. I've just cooked in 2 sort of pot-sized balls of the mix with still some pinkies in, and just reactivated my peg really. I've gone from catching no roach at all. I've just had 2 in 2 drops in a day, so that's brought the fish back. I'm never one to shy away from trying to change things if things aren't quite going right, and you know, topping up with ground bait, all you're doing really is just adding to what you've got on the bottom and just adding a little bit more activity in your peg, and it's worked brilliantly just to catch, you know, them 2 or 3 bigger fish again and get me sort of back on track. A lot of people they tend to shy away from topping up on a clear canal like this, but it can, you know, score really well. Sometimes if you've got 2 lines going, I mean, sometimes if I'm fishing on a clear canal like this, I'll have 2 lines working, and that's really good because you can top up on one and manage to see what happens and then top up on the other one if it works really well. But today I'm just fishing 1 line at a tack. I have got another line where I'm just feeding hemp, but of course I've got no ground bait at all on that line, and the hemp line's just for later, just to try and see if I can catch some bigger roach later in the day. The trouble with hemp is it always takes a long time to respond. It's rare you can catch straight away with hemp. It's just a case of keep feeding it and trying it later on in the session. But that ground bait's definitely brought 1 or 2 roach back in the peg, so hopefully I'll catch some more now. This has been a real lovely day's fishing. Fantastic. I've caught all sizes of fish, but mainly a good stamp of roach and perch. A lot of roach has been sort of 4 to even a pound. I've had a couple of pound size fish. It really has been a cracking day's fishing. Now the main thing to take away from this, every fish that I've caught has been right over the top of the ground bait. The 2 ground baits I've used, the 3000 Super Canal Black and the Census Roach from the classic range. I've mixed them 2 together. I've had a little bit of crushed hemp, fed an area using a cup. I've not balled it in, I've used my cup, fed 6 or 7 balls at the start with some pinkies in and hemp, and then just loose fed hemp and maggots over the top. 3 or 4 times during the day I've topped up with a couple of balls of ground bait just to keep activity in my peg, and every time I've topped up with the ground bait I've caught roach again, so it's just concentrated the fish back in an area. I've fished with quite light rigs from 0.4 up to 0.8, just with a space shot and a small bulk, small hook, a size 20, B511 Camasan hook, silver hook, just baited with single maggot. What a terrific day's fishing. And I think when you look at this bag of roach that I've caught on the Mexborough Canal, you'll think to yourself, God, what a piece of water that is. It's vastly underused. There's not been another angler on the bank today. It's a place where you can drive to every peg. If you want a day's fishing up Mexborough Canal catching roach, come and have a go, it's fantastic.
If you want to head down to the Mexborough Canal yourself to try out Alan's tactics, the venue can be found just off Doncaster Road outside Mexborough. The postcode to head for is S640JD. Day tickets are available on the bank from Rotherham and District Angling Association.